This time we will add command handling to the app we created in the first video. And adding command handling requires 3 steps. So the first step would be to implement the ICommand interface. And the second step would be to add a named button to our XAML file. And in the third step, we will connect the button and the command we create in our code. And I've prepared something, and we will go through the code line by line. So the interface ICommand is documented on Microsoft's documentation platform, and this interface defines 2 methods, the canExecute method and the execute method, and defines 1 event, canExecuteChanged. And to implement this interface in C++, using C++ WinRT, you would simply derive from implements and pass in the derived class name and the interface you want to implement. And the first method we implement is execute. And if you see in the documentation, it has 1 parameter of type object, which is inspectable in C++ WinRT, and it has void return type, but in our case we use fire and forget because we use coroutines, and co-await requires that we cannot use void as a return type but use fire and forget. So when we execute our command, it will open a dialog box displaying hello XAML commands, and once we close it, it's done. So the next method we implement is canExecute, and according to the documentation, it requires that we receive 1 parameter from type object, and we return a Boolean variable. And yeah, in our case, I simply set the canExecute variable to true, but in a true production environment, you maybe want to compute this value based on your internal application logic. And then I compare the current state of the canExecute with the last state, which I named couldExecute. And if those states are different, then I save the new state in a member variable and call the event handler such that clients are notified that the canExecute state actually changed. And then I return the new state. And implementing the canExecuteChanged event works as following. First, we define our event handler, which in this case is event handler of inspectable. And then we have to implement 2 methods. The first one, canExecuteChange, which takes 1 object of type delegate and returns an event token, is used to register for the event. And if you want to deregister, then you would take the event token, pass it to the canExecuteChanged method that only takes the event token, and call remove, and then you won't be notified in the future anymore. And this canExecuteChanged event member is of type agile event. This is part of C++ WinRT. So the second step is to add a named button to our XAML page. And I made a very simple button, and it only displays click me. It has a margin of 50 because if we start it in debug mode, then we have this little tool gizmo on the bottom, on the top, and I don't want it to hide our button. And then we give it the name my button, and this is the identifier we will use in the code to reference the button later on. And the last step is now to add an instance of our class and connect this instance with the actual button in the XAML. And we do this by searching for the my button identifier within the XAML object tree and cast the returned object into button base. This is important because If you would only cast to button, then you won't have access to the command property, and the command property is only available in button base, therefore we cast to button base. Yeah, and then we pass in command. And let's see when we compile and run it what happens. So if I click me, then the dialog box opens as expected. Okay, this is German for close, but anyway I press it and it's gone, and if I press it again it's available.